I mean, honestly, I really wonder what's wrong with some people. It's like a sickness, you know? No matter what the issue is, no matter what is going on, they will find some way to blame the Gulf or to blame Saudi Arabia or to blame MBS. There are people who are spreading literally Zionist propaganda that has been proven to be the source of it has been proven to be Zionists, Zionist propaganda, Israelis, and they're propagating it on social media. Like, for example, we had the recent thing saying that Saudi Arabia was cooperating with the U.S. UK strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. That went everywhere. That spread everywhere. And when you talk about the issue of Gaza, when you talk about the ICJ, when you talk about any of the efforts to hold the Israelis responsible, when you talk about anything having to do with the atrocities in Gaza, rather than correctly assigning blame and responsibility to the West, rather than correctly assigning blame and responsibility even to the Israelis, rather than assigning blame and responsibility to the United States and to Europe, they say, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. What about Saudi Arabia? What about the Gulf? They're the real problem. What? What are you talking about? No one that you're angry at has dropped a single bomb on Gaza. No one that you're angry about has funded the IDF. No one that you're talking about circumvented their own legislature in order to send money and weapons to the Israelis. You're angry at the Muslims, and you want the Muslims to be angry at the Muslims. That's all you're doing. And literally, this rumor that they spread about Saudi Arabia and the UAE cooperating with the US-UK airstrikes on Yemen contradicted the statements by the governments of those countries that were calling for restraint and calling for de-escalation. And it contradicts the reality that Saudi Arabia has accelerated their peace negotiations with the Houthis. Not to mention, it contradicts the very fact that the airstrikes are being carried out from the USS Eisenhower, from naval destroyers, and from submarines. Means no one's flying over anyone's airspace. Why are you making up lies? Why are you trying to turn people against the Muslims and against their leaders and against their rulers? No matter what it is, you find some way to put it on the rulers, but never on the actual perpetrators of the crimes. You want to be angry at the Gulf rulers and the Arab rulers and the Muslim rulers. You want to be angry at them because they have failed to prevent the genocide in Gaza. Never mind how much they have been able to do to prevent it being worse. No matter how much they've been able to do to actually give assistance and aid to Gaza. No matter how much of a worse catastrophe they have been able to prevent, it's true. They haven't been able to withhold the Israelis completely from committing atrocities in Gaza. That's true. And you want to be mad at them for that, rather than being mad at the ones who are actually committing the genocide, rather than being mad at the ones who are actually supporting and promoting and funding and enabling the genocide in the first place. You want to be mad at the Muslims. You want to be mad at the Muslim rulers. It's like if I reach across the table and slap you, and then instead of slapping me back, you slap the person next to you because they failed to prevent me from slapping you. Well, how does that help? How does you slapping them prevent me from slapping you again? Maybe the person that you slapped instead of me, now both of us are going to slap you together. Or maybe I can just sit back and watch you slap each other. You see how it works? That's how it works. And that's what you're trying to do. And that's what the Zionists are trying to do. You have genuinely wicked disseminators of disinformation, malicious, malignant disinformation against the Muslims and against the Arab states, malicious disinformation. There are legitimately wicked disseminators of that information. And then there are the comparatively innocent but ignorant promoters and spreaders of that disinformation. And the internet is full of them. The internet is full of them. There are people who know that they're lying and who make up lies just to serve the West. You have people who are spreading this kind of disinformation who, by their own mouths, you'll see them, and you'll know who I'm talking about. You have people who are on Muslim programs, Muslim channels, uh, telling you directly that they work for Western companies, that they advise Western companies, that they advise Western governments. Even I saw one on a Muslim channel, on a Muslim program, saying, not ashamed to say, not embarrassed to say, that he literally advises alcohol companies selling khamr in Muslim countries. And still you're going to take this person and their word and not understand immediately that this is someone who is promoting Western agenda, that this is someone who's promoting the Western colonizing agenda in the Muslim world. These types of people never run out of criticism and slander against the Muslim rulers, but they barely say a word of condemnation against the West. In fact, they'll tell you that only Westerners care about Gaza. They'll tell you that only Westerners care about what's happening in Palestine. How much more ignorant and naive and gullible can you possibly be if you listen to this kind of nonsense? If you can't identify it immediately that this person is a plant, that this person is, whether they're an agent or not, they're doing the work of an agent. No, they're trying to divide the Muslims against each other. And you're trying to say now, and even the Houthis came out and said that it was a lie. Even the Houthis said it was a lie. But still you try to spread it. And it's been proven that that claim about the Saudis and the Emiratis cooperating with the airstrikes against the Houthis has been proven that was the source of that directly was the Israeli Zionist media. And still you have Muslims spreading that misinformation, that disinformation, that slander. Well, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Take note of who is most actively spreading, most aggressively spreading this kind of negative, pro-Western, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab propaganda on social media. Take note of who's doing that and understand who they are and what they're really about. Now, and I've seen another rumor saying that the Gulf Arabs were buying properties in Palestine, particularly in the West Bank, but were buying property in the West Bank and then selling it to settlers. That there were properties, that there were homes that the settlers couldn't buy, that the Palestinians wouldn't sell them. So then the Palestinians who owned those homes sold their properties to Gulf Arabs, who then turned around and sold it to the Jews. Now, I'm sorry, but if you believe that, in that version of the telling of that, then you really don't understand the situation very well, because the settlers don't buy property. That's not how they get homes in Palestine. They don't buy it from the Palestinians. It's confiscated by the government and then handed over to the settlers. The settlers aren't property tycoons. They're not coming over from the United States and from Europe because they've got a lot of money. Most of them are trying to escape something, either their own financial or career failure, or potentially they have criminal cases and they're escaping to Israel as settlers because they know that as settlers, whether they are actually religious and practicing Orthodox Jews or they just pretend to be, Israel will give them property. They're freeloaders. That's what settlers are. They're freeloaders. They don't go over there to buy property. They don't go over there because they have the money to buy property. If they had that kind of money, they would never leave where they came from, most likely. They're going over there to live off the welfare state. And if they couldn't, they wouldn't go. So no one is buying property from Palestinians and then selling it to settlers because, number one, that's not how settlers get property in Israel. They get it by the land and the property being confiscated on their behalf by the government, and then it's handed over to them by the government. There's no money changing hands. So if there's a case of a Palestinian selling their home to a Gulf Arab, and then that Gulf Arab flipping the home and selling it to a Jew, well, that's just a property deal. That's all that is. That's a Palestinian getting paid good money for their home by choice, and then the Gulf Arab flipping the property and making money off of it himself. But it's not settlers. If they couldn't get the properties for free and live off the welfare state of Israel, they wouldn't be there. They'd go back to where they came from, if they could go back to where they came from, if they don't have an arrest warrant where they came from. So no, think through the information that you get online. Think it through and research it and look who's saying it and try to figure out what the source of that information was. Because when you hear any information that tries to divert your attention away from the actual perpetrators of the atrocities and the crimes in Palestine and redirect it against the Arab rulers, then you can be sure that the source of that misinformation and that disinformation and that slander, you can be sure that the source of that information is in Tel Aviv or in Washington. Because look, it's the United States, it's Europe, it's the West, and it's the Israelis. The Israelis, as I've said before, the IDF is nothing but the Jewish brigade of Western imperialism. That's all it is. They're the ones who are killing Palestinians. They're the ones who are bombing Gaza. They're the ones who are devastating Gaza. And they're doing it with the support of the United States. They're doing it with the support of Europe. They're doing it with the support of the West. Germany said that they were going to try to undermine South Africa's case of genocide against Israel at the ICJ. Germany, the country that committed the Holocaust, is trying to say that the South African case has no basis. Well, we all know the basis. We see the basis every day, but they're trying to defend it. So the collective West is supporting genocide in Gaza. The collective West is actively and aggressively supporting the genocide in Gaza. But then you have people saying, yes, but let's talk about the Gulf. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Let's talk about the UAE. Let's talk about the Muslim rulers. As if they're the ones who are committing the genocide, because you just don't want to talk about the ones who are actually committing the genocide, most likely because you live in those countries. You live in the countries that are actively supporting the genocide, and you don't want to talk about that. You want to redirect blame and responsibility from the government of the country that you live in, because it's more comfortable for you. But you need to be honest. And you're sowing discord in the Muslim world, while everyone in the Muslim world is working very hard to have solidarity and to follow a unified policy. And the only ones who are the most active in trying to undermine that is the United States. And unfortunately, they're able to call upon their own agents of misinformation and disinformation. And unfortunately, again, many Muslims are already primed to believe it. They're already primed to believe the worst. They're already primed to have no husn al-dhan. They're already primed to believe that their rulers are betraying them, that their rulers are traitors to the ummah. So you can have a handful of people who will disseminate malicious slander and disinformation, and they have a remarkable amplification device on the internet. They have a remarkable speaker system that will amplify and broadcast their disinformation and their propaganda across the Muslim world, especially in the English-speaking Muslim world. And Muslims will believe it without ever checking. Because like I said, on the face of it, the idea that the Gulf governments were cooperating and providing, opening their airspace for the U.S. and the U.K. to attack Yemen, on the face of it, it's absurd because they're not attacking that way. That's not the way they're attacking. They're attacking from the sea. No one needs to open any airspace for them. And like I said, also with this allegation about settlers, it's absurd on the face of it. Tell me a Palestinian who was paid for his land that was then taken over by a settler. What settler ever bought property? They steal it. That's how it works. So verify information before you believe it, number one. And number two, certainly verify it before you ever spread it.